Hey there, welcome to episode 113 of the Quaggling Sand audio program. I am your host, Dan Hugo, recording this at 11:47 a.m. Pacific Standard Time here in the greater Vegas area. It is January 7, 2026, Wednesday. We publish on Wednesdays, so running a little late, but, better late than the other thing. Today's title and topic, trade shows. If you are not watching your calendar eagerly about trade shows in Las Vegas, you may not know this, but we'll get to it in a moment. If you're not familiar with quaggling sand, however, let me tell you, first of all, it's a term I coined when I was very young, maybe 5. I don't know if I have a definitive age range on this, when this happened, but it's a technical term. You probably refer to this condition as pins and needles, the return of sensation after maybe your hand was numb from sitting on it or sleeping on it or whatever, your foot from sitting funny, hilarious perhaps. So yes, you probably call it pins and needles. I refer to it as quaggling sand, or I did. Too many odd looks. What, little kid talking technical here? So I was in New Jersey. That was my horrible. Anyway. This is an audio program about stories. It is of stories and reflections, recollections. Perhaps they will be interesting or insightful for you to listen to. I can't foresee having a guest. I have not had any guests thus far. Pretty self-serving when you think about it. So quaggling sand is the sands of time circulating through my memories. And then what comes out, who knows? Could be anything. This week it's trade shows. This is a weekly program and totally free for you to enjoy wherever you find your audio programs. And hopefully wherever you did, you're able to locate the episode description, which contains show notes, including a brief summary of today's episode and the show or the episode links, which I will no longer be up until now. Well, up until last week, I was reading the links. And I think it takes up too much time. And also, I figure if you're going to click on the links, you're probably going to have access to the links. So I don't need to read them to you. The weekly episode links, I will make a very brief mention today. But generally moving forward, I will only mention links if they're not the typical links, if they're episode links, like an article or some reference or something. And usually I have some comments about why I'm including it. So there you go. Happy New Year for you and me. So let's get started. The summary of today's episode. CES 2026 is in effect this week in Vegas. I think this makes 13 for me in a row. And while the show floor opened, why did I say today? Yesterday. I wrote this yesterday. Yesterday, I'm going to head down there today. Who writes this stuff? I should write it relative to the release. So the show floor opened yesterday. That's Tuesday. I'm going to head down there today, Wednesday, to Eureka Park, the only part of the show I find valuable. That's pretty cynical. That's my middle name, believe it or not. The links, as I said, the Quaggling Sand homepage, the profile page linking everything. You can check that out for links to all of the audio programs I produce and some other stuff. You can see for yourself. That's what links are for. You don't have to pay for anything. You don't have to buy anything, despite the name. There you go. So let's get on with it so we can get on with the day. I need to head down and get my badge too. So we will begin with what is a trade show? Trade show. Some people, I guess there are conventions sometimes, although I think a trade show is more open. The CES is not necessarily completely open. You're supposed to be in the industry. So, sort of like the Adult Video Awards show, which used to be held in November at the same time as Comdex, which we'll get to in a moment. Trade shows and such. We have the Las Vegas Convention and Visitors Authority, the LVCVA, here in Vegas. This is the first time or place about which I have been so interested enough to be aware of such a resource after about as much time living in Silicon Valley and having no real attention for such matters. Convention, I was busy doing other things when I was in Silicon Valley. conventions and trade shows and whatnot are a big deal here in Vegas, like a big, big, big deal. That probably has something to do with, aside from many other interests in the entrepreneurial, that probably has something to do with why I pay attention, aside from other interests in the entrepreneurial and innovative ecosystem here. You can listen to Cafe Genius Impresarios for more about that. I have mostly been involved with the technology-oriented trade shows here in Vegas, but I have discovered in my travels that most of these shows sort of have the same feeling to them. They're all a buzz of commotion and foot traffic, with everyone trying to get attention and hoping people will stop to hear the story, watch the presentation, maybe allow for a badge scan. Hey, can I scan your badge? CES is this week here in Vegas with an estimated attendance of 140,000 this year. That is an estimate. The actual will be reported in the near future, and we presume it is reasonably accurate, but who knows? It can be correlated against the LVCVA visitor numbers next month when they release them. I actually checked once several years ago, and the lvcva.com/research, you have to click around a little bit, but you can find visitation, weekly visitor numbers, and then you can compare them. And I had looked when CES was, 180,000 attendees. I don't know if they're including the people that work the show, because 180,000, that's a lot of people. And then you have to add the show staff, right? The people working in the booths and whatnot. But I actually checked, and weekly visits were, overall for the Las Vegas region, not the city, were essentially the same. So it was more replacement, if that makes sense. Now, our weekly numbers should go down overall for 2025, as has been the case, as you may have read in the news. Generally speaking, each month has been down. Visitor numbers have been down this month compared to the same month last year. So 2024, 2025, the numbers were down between 8 and 11%, if I recall correctly. So we'll see what New Year's Eve is a big deal here in Vegas. I don't know if they hit the numbers they were estimating. I don't know if they hit the higher numbers. That will come out also. But that's the beginning of the tourism year. And CES is the first big event. Typically, it was a huge event here in Vegas. Now, post-pandemic, if you're imagining an event with 180,000 people, post-pandemic was something like 80,000, I think it was. We can look real quick, but I looked this up the other day. The show was dismal. It was a ghost town. And CES attendance 2022. Yeah. So if we're normally having, so here it is, pre-pandemic, 100, the 2020 show. Now, if you'll recall, January 2020, the show took place. I don't know if you would recall that. And the pandemic lockdowns in the United States began in March of 2020. So 170,000 attended the show in January of 2020. Interesting. The 2021, because of lockdowns, it was a virtual show. So that one really doesn't count as far as attendance numbers. And then 40 to 45,000 attendees in 2022. So that was a rough year. And now we are back up to about 140,000. So and I think the high, there's news from 2023 that the crowd was bigger than 2022. I think you could trip over any event and have it be bigger. But anyway, so 40 to 45. Yeah. Media attendance was probably a big giant chunk of that 40. So people come and they do their YouTube video content, their TikTok videos, their magazine articles, their professional or mainstream tech journalists that come here and so on. So it's a big show for that. Supposedly, well, let's look at the research tab for November of 2025. I had some numbers here. I don't know how they get to the total. Maybe. Yeah, I guess that's about right. So I had done a quick back of the envelope. There are approximately 150,000 hotel rooms here in Vegas. For November of 2025, which is the month I pulled up, they report a total inventory of, where is it? 149,971 rooms. That's for the month. So that's with construction and demolition also. But total room, it's been as high as 155,000 estimate, whatever the total numbers were. It would be interesting though to kind of flip through these and see how they correlate with different construction events. The city is fairly active in that regard, or the region. Hey, fun fact, the Strip is not in the city of Las Vegas. Just keep that in mind. So total visitor volume for November 2025, 3.1 million people, 3,141,600. Total convention attendance, which I have to assume is a part of the total visitor volume, is 547,000, okay, for November. So November is a 30-day month. It's got, let me make sure of this. So the first day was on a Saturday, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, so 4 full weeks. So the last day was also on a Saturday. So 4 full weeks, 4 weeks. It's 3.1 million total volume. So I had, that's like a million people per week. Not a million, I'm sorry. It's 750,000 people per week ish. 3.1 million divided by 4 is, 775,000 people per week. That's crazy. How do we get that number? Anyway, so I was looking at, so convention attendance, it's something like 75 to 80 or something like that, right? For 320, closer to 100, I'm sorry. Over 100 for November. I was looking at annualized, so 100,000 people. So CES doesn't, it's not like 100% increase or anything, but it is the largest among the largest, if not the largest show that takes place in Vegas, with an annualized visitor rate estimated from 2024 of 40 million, 40.1 million or something like that. So we get a lot of people coming through Vegas normally. Even if it's down a few percent, it's still a lot of people. And trade shows make a nice chunk of that. And here's the thing about trade shows. The room rates, I read something last week, I think it was, that some rooms for the last minute CES, probably investor class people with money that they're going to spend more money, they were getting, or they were asking $1,000 for rooms per night. Because if you wait till the last minute, because everybody knows this event is coming up, the dates are well known a year in advance or more. There are companies that book multiple years in advance. So we'll see how many people, and it's interesting, if we have 150,000 hotel rooms and attendance is 140,000 or more people, plus the people working at the show and so on, it's a lot of doubling up in the rooms. But also, what does that do for regular tourism? So some of these numbers I think are hand-waved. It'd be interesting to actually do some deep dive in here, and I probably will. It's part of the big plan for Cafe Genius impresarios. So we'll talk about this more. Anyway, so tourism in general, big deal in Vegas. Trade shows, big deal in Vegas. And CES kicks off the year. And after 2025 was a little slow, everybody's looking. Is this going to be the turnaround? So yeah, trade shows and conventions. LVCVA, Convention and Visitors Authority. So trade show, convention, whatever the case may be. My first show was CardTech SecureTech. And I spelled it with an E, not that you would see that, but I think it might have been SECURTECH, but it was CardTech/SecureTech, however they spelled it. So when I was working with SCM Microsystems in 1996, we had occasion to go to the CardTech SecureTech show in Atlanta, where we had a tiny, because we were a little startup, 10 by 10 foot cube booth, a cube-shaped booth, in a show that was decidedly focused on smart cards and security. There were all kinds of machines that were showing how you could assemble smart cards. There were machines that would glue the chip in, and then the contact part. I don't know what they call that. Showing machines that were bending cards to show their usable life. They're going to be in a wallet or a pocket or something, so they got to survive a lot without that chip popping out. card printers, just the whole nine. Like, how exciting could you possibly find a show about smart cards? ISO 7816 compliant smart cards, in fact. And security, right? Applications of these smart cards and so on. Not what you would call a fun time for anyone not into those things. I had been to Atlanta before, usually passing through the airport on a connecting flight. But here we had a few days and checked out Buckethead and the area around the event venue. And as it happens, and we stayed in a hotel that had like a bridge, like a hallway that connected to wherever the event was, the event venue. I don't know if it was a convention center. It didn't take up that much space to be. I'm thinking Vegas Convention Center, not that big. But the hotel where we were staying was also where some members of the U.S. Summer Olympic track team were staying. The Summer Olympics would be coming up shortly after the show. Anytime we ran into them in the elevator or other parts of the hotel, we were reminded why normal people cannot compete in such events. They were big, they were tall, they were very athletic. So yeah, that was kind of interesting. And as it turns out, the infamous Olympic Park pipe bomb incident took place shortly after the event. We were not there in Atlanta anymore. It was like a week or two later, I think it was. I can't remember exactly, but it was, we didn't just miss it. But it was one of those things that really makes you think for a minute. Nobody talked about CardTech SecureTech as it was. The bombing incident took the headlines for quite some time. There was a lot of controversy and so on, but it was a hole-in-the-wall show. Not much fanfare, not much attention. It was an experience, and I did experience being a tiny company in a 10 by 10 foot little cubicle-shaped booth. I mean, literally, if you, there are some workplaces where you work in a cubicle. It was about that big, and that is totally not uncommon, right? Then there was Comdex. My first well-known trade show, a little bit slightly more mainstream, was Comdex in November of 1997. While I was working for UMax Computer Corporation making Mac clones. This was a work trip where I went in on Saturday to help set up our booth, stayed until Sunday breaking it down, and then worked in the booth through the week. I shared a room with a coworker, Jimmy G. Now, each day we would walk from Treasure Island to the convention center. This was way back when. It was basically some dirt fields in the middle. It wasn't nearly so built up as it is now. So if you can imagine where the Wynn and Encore are, I think that's where the dirt fields were. I didn't go back and review this, but I do. I mean, I'm sure I could look at a map of Vegas in that time frame and see what was constructed. I just remember I had no notion of Vegas, by the way. That was the thing. Like, we would literally go, okay, we walk this way, and then we turn here, and we did, okay, good. And there was really no Google Maps. There was no, So we had to basically walk in the dark and hope for the best. It was an interesting time. And then we would walk back at night. And yeah, a lot has changed since then. And we would hang around downtown at the Horseshoe, now called Binion's, playing 25-cent craps for fun. Quite a bit has changed since. There's no more 25 cents craps. That's crazy. Our time at the show was non-stop repetition, speaking to the same questions and describing our products over and over and over. My favorite is when someone's standing right behind the person who's asking the questions. They step up and they ask the same exact question. And you're like, did you hear anything I just said? So I don't have to start over. Okay, I'll start over. Now, this was during the time when UMax was going to sponsor the Oakland Coliseum, somewhat ironically working with the Raiders, which is now a Vegas football team, and the A's, soon to be a Vegas baseball team, to establish the naming and perks and whatnot, the UMax box and so on. We actually attended a game against the Dolphins, Miami Dolphins, and had a little party. We all had our UMax Coliseum t-shirts and whatnot. And it never came to be. Our booth theme at Comdex was thus Raider football, black and white, not really black and silver, black and white, sort of athletic, shorts and shirts and whatnot. Including, we had 4 Raiderettes, the cheerleaders, putting on a cheer show every 20 or 30 minutes or so in the booth. It was a huge booth. It was, I don't know, probably 100 by 100 or something. It was big enough to have a stage and all that stuff. So they were putting on a show every 20 or 30 minutes, which usually ended the questions briefly. The most of the visitors would sort of pause. They'd turn away. Oh, I'm going to go watch that show now. It's kind of funny. I mean, once you've seen them do the show 2 or 3 times, you're like, okay, I get it. We're good. The crowd and the repetition were tolerable. It was fun to hang out with the coworkers and take in a show. We went and saw Penn and Teller. We played craps, as I mentioned. We wandered around Vegas a bit. I had been to Vegas once or twice prior, only for a weekend. So the take home from this experience with 9 days of Vegas under my belt was that I would rather not spend so much time here. Here, one of those. I don't know. Here I am. Comdex 2. I had a second opportunity to attend Comdex in Vegas, this time in November of 1999, while I was working for Philips Components, part of Philips Electronics. This was a kind of an odd thing since a lot of our business unit at Philips was UMAX people, refugees that had been let go in the UCC, UMAX Computer Corporation, shut down. This made for a fun time since we all knew each other from UMAX. We were kind of small company people that were working at this big giant company. And we were more familiar with the trade show timeline. And in this case, since we were working for a huge multinational corporation, they had people to set up and break down the booth and deal with the logistics and whatnot. So we had far less manual labor to attend to. Although we did, it was myself and our lab tech, who that's a simplified title. He could do anything. He was an Apple employee back when Apple was founded. I think he was employee number 104, had been around, very talented. We had to, basically when they took some of the stuff we were working on to demo it or show it in the booth, it had to be sort of assembled, but it also had to give it the once over, make sure it was working. I think there was some like emergency soldering to do. So we got that all working. The show itself was not great. If memory serves, it was not so popular a booth as we had at UMAX. We were just using the booth for, it was not only our group, so it was a big Philips brand booth. So we were in one corner with our little display technologies. Philips was well known for optical storage, medical devices, and so on. So they had a variety of different types of things going on in there. Not as exciting though, not so much energy. Comdex as a show was kind of on its way out, though, with 2003, the final year of Comdex, due to substantial attendance decline. CES had been running since the 70s and would have 2 shows in Vegas for a long time, a summer and a winter show. But the winter show kind of became the lone CES event by 1998, becoming the go-to event for consumer electronics. So Comdex in 1999, November 1999, was kind of a snoozer. CES would come in January, only 2 months later, less than 2 months really, and there could be only one. And CES is this week and Comdex is not. Philips was actually the largest company for which I'd attended a trade show. It was the biggest company I ever worked for. Intel, while I was working there in 2015 or so, was around 100,000 worldwide employees. Philips was around 160,000 in the year 2000. And Intel in 2000 was about 86,000, having grown from 70,000 in 1999. So Intel was kind of the up and coming. I mean, Intel had been around. They launched their products in 1971, the 4004 microprocessor for calculators. But it was a growing company and more well known and so on. So in 1999, they had 70,000. By CES 2000, 86,000 employees, and they've only gone over 100 a little bit. I mean, they've basically been a 100,000 person company. Working at a trade show of any kind for big companies is a vastly different experience compared to being in one of those 10 by 10 cubicle booths. I don't know if it's better. I'm going to include Maker Faire in this collection. This is a completely different sort of thing, though over time it did lean more towards being a trade show style convention, or maybe a convention style trade show, however you want to look at it. I had been to a Maker Faire in San Mateo in around 2008 or so, might have been 7. And it was described to me by someone who had been to both that Maker Faire and to Burning Man, that it was sort of like Burning Man for families. A lot of fire, a lot of welding, a lot of metal stuff, a lot of people riding bicycles and juggling and creative machinery, creative outfits, and so on. But definitely aimed for family attendance, education and creativity aimed more at kids and students and so on. So a good event. By the time I was attending for Intel in 2014, it had turned into something that I described in these words exactly. Maker Faire used to be a show where people were showing off what they were making. Now it is a show where people are showing off what they are selling. And when I say people, in this case, also could have been major international corporations. With Intel as one of the sponsors, and I think Disney was in there briefly, the tone had changed, to say the least. For better or worse, Intel was only involved with Maker Faire for, 3 years maybe? And then the big change, end of life of all the Maker products, all that. Part of my job role outside of engineering in the lab on our Maker products was to participate in hackathons on behalf of Intel, supporting participants in what I usually labeled a mentor role, or not me. Everybody labels that you're a mentor at a hackathon to help people with their projects and so on. Everybody stays up all night eating pizza and Red Bull and trying to figure out how does this thing work? Does Intel know how to do any sort of documentation for normal people? No. Our America's Greatest Makers reality show and working in the booth and other engagements around Maker Faire in San Mateo, California, Queens, New York, and Rome, Italy. That was a good one. It was a good time in general. And even though there was a decidedly commercial flavor to the California show and somewhat in the New York show, the show in Rome was much more centrist. Kind of making and creativity and so on is a big deal in Italy in general, with companies and individuals and startups, a lot more Arduino influence there in Rome. And as you may or may not know, Italy had, and may still have possibly, more maker spaces per capita than any other country in the world. Makers and Arduino were a pretty big deal in Italy, though now that Qualcomm acquired Arduino, that may or may not continue. There's already been a little bit of backlash about that. But anyway, Arduino was a substantial presence at Maker Fairs and in general. The take home for me, it was fun, interesting, and educational to encounter so many normal people, except for the corporate booths. Our Intel booth had paid booth attendees. They were not employees, but they were there to help people, I suppose, who did not know anything about the products per se. They were not part of our group. They were not part of the whole thing. They were just there to wear an Intel shirt and guide people to get their badge signed or scanned, I guess. Did they have badge scanning? I don't know. Some sort of collection of minds to sell more to, and that didn't really happen. So there you go. It would be nice to return to that sort of thing at some point, I think, for me, and this would be a little lesson for me that not all good shows are here in Vegas. I knew that already, but that was a reminder. And interesting people do not always end up in Vegas at some point. That was an assumption I had made with a show like CES being so large as it was. And I will say, a lot of people do come here that I have worked with before and so on. But not everybody. And sometimes it's more fun to go to other places than to just stay in Vegas and wait for people to come here for CES or other shows. That's a different story for a different time. But generally speaking, it's not the best thing in the world to just stay in Vegas. I mean, it's not like being a trapdoor spider, right? Just wait for people to wander by. So CES, this is the 13th CES for which I have a free floor badge. I don't pay the $1,000 or $2,000 to attend special sessions or all that silliness. And that includes the virtual show in January of 2021 during the COVID lockdowns and the dismal show in 2022 with less than half the normal annual attendance, as we discussed earlier. If it was 40,000, that's like a quarter, basically. The show itself is far too large to see everything, and they do a reasonably, though not completely thorough job of grouping related booths into the same halls. You may have to, and the convention center has been under construction, so some parts of it are probably not in use, but they do have the West Hall now, which is very modern, has lots and lots of space. So for all I know, the entire show is in there. I usually don't go to the main halls anymore. If I go this time, it would be Friday. Just spend some time, do a lap, see what's up. I might want to see Asus has a new motherboard, things like this. There might be a specific thing, but I generally don't go to the main halls because it's a lot of the shining lights and people who have no idea what they're talking about in the booths, and here's what we're selling. So, it helps people to not have to negotiate transit around this place between the convention center, the Sands Expo, which is now the Venetian Expo, and various satellite venues and then suites and whatnot. It has never been perfect, but it could be far worse, like alphabetical. That would be a mess. By the way, I did work in the Intel booth unofficially one year. They seemed surprised that they had an employee living here who required no hotel and no other expenses of note. Intel. Oh, Intel. How did you get to where you are today? Well, I have a couple of ideas. My favorite part of the show, the part that basically gets all of my attention at this point, is Eureka Park, which is a registered trademark, believe it or not, of CTA, Consumer Technology Association, where we find people building startups or trying to launch their ideas, kind of like the original Maker Faire notion, often sponsored by their respective countries, and so appearing in a little clustered super booth of sorts, or what I refer to as national pavilions. I don't know if that's what they call them. With South Korea and France being rather prolific, there's a lot of South Korean and French stuff going on. But Italy and Turkey and the Netherlands and many other countries are also very present, very visible. They have their national flag and color schemes, and they're very visible. These are also groupings. There are also groupings of different focal areas, like smart city or health and well-being, though the intersection between country and focus is not so clearly organized. So you can go there and find a smart city or health and well-being from France, and they'll be in the French section. But you can also find booths grouped, and these are the 10 by 10 booths. In the pavilions, you really more get like a podium. So it's kind of a common area, and you just have a little spot to stake out and talk to people. So there might be a health and wellness or smart city or whatever sections of booths. So those are probably domestic. But so it's not perfect, but it's not bad. And you can see all of Eureka Park in a day. And then if you go back, like usually I would go one day, do that. Second day, go back and pick out a couple of things that I was particularly interested in. So it's all contained in one large space. The rest of the show, well, unless there is something specific, like I mentioned, the Asus motherboard, and it doesn't matter if I see it. If there's something I actually want to see in person, especially if it's something I'd want to try out or touch in some way, like, the latest mechanical keyboard from this new company. Okay, I'll go there and type a couple of characters. Oh, okay, that's nice. Can I try on the glasses? Can I see what the watch looks like? Can I press the buttons? Whatever. So if there's some sort of tactile interaction or something like that, it's interesting to see and touch the products or listen to it or whatever it is. But I have arrived at this ratio that 1/3 of the things at CES are products that have already been launched or launching. So you're going to be able to play with them at some point, like the keyboard. 1/3 or maybe they're sort of testing the waters for a response, and 1/3 are never going to see the light of day. I see a lot of those. Like a lot of the cool things that I would go and check out, they never ship. They never exist. One of them was the Smart Desk from Razer. It was a modular gaming desk with display, all kinds of cool stuff. Never again. I'm having a little yerba mate there. So over the years, there have been more and more and still more content creators with press access getting the ins and outs of all sorts of things found at CES. They usually have early access. They'll go before the show opens. And so I leave it to them. And they focus on the booths filled with actual founders. They focus on booths filled with products that will be in their content, right? So, we did a thing on keyboards. We did a thing on displays. We did a thing on smart glasses, right? So they'll do their little focal areas, and I can catch those on YouTube anytime I want. So I spend my time on booths filled with actual founders instead of booths filled with contract help. So the blinking lights, shiny surfaces, the attention getting, hey, come to. LG is known for this. I think Samsung is also known for this. They put up these huge displays, very, very extravagant booths. Most of the people in there have no idea what they're talking about. So that's always fun. When you go to Eureka Park, you're going to go and talk to the founder of the company or the people that are working on the products all the time. They know what they're trying to accomplish. They're motivated and so on. So it's just a different show. In fact, I think I've suggested they really should have it as a separate show. There are other shows as well. I have attended some other shows here in Vegas, for example, like the National Association of Broadcasters show, which is focused on video, audio, editing, and other tech that is more focused on professionals and prosumers than CES is. It's still tech and nerdy. Mobile World Congress is a well-known show of substantial size in Barcelona each year. The Las Vegas version has taken place about 3 or 4 times now. It's usually in like October, November, I think. October, I think. You can tell I'm very excited about that one. I attended the first 2 free tickets, and I found them to be something of a disappointment. I spoke to some people working the show, bored out of their minds. They tended to agree. I spoke to people from Barcelona who had attended the Vegas show. They attended the Barcelona show, of course. They were working in booths. They had companies from Spain or Europe. I think one was actually from Spain, and so they had a more familiarity with the show in Barcelona. So I said, "What do you think of this here show in Vegas?" And they kind of shook their heads, and they're like, "It's not so good." That's the way it is. Thanks to my mom and her affiliation and interests in the design world. I mean, interests like material interests. Shows like KBIZ, the Kitchen and Bath Industry Show, and more recently, the High Def Show, aimed more at aesthetic home products, kitchen and bath devices and technologies, and so on, all sorts of things, which could remind the nerd crowd that there is more to life than AI and memory DIMMs. So different. But I will say that the general feel of any trade show is very similar. I have to admit, I've missed out thus far on some of the more unusual shows here in the Vegas area. The pizza show, I don't know what it's actually called, but that's exactly what it sounds like. And there are many others. All the time, all manner of topics. I mean, if 500,000 people were here for trade shows in November, there was no CES that month, so they were doing other stuff. Surely some of those shows would be attendable, some for free, others not, but for smaller shows, there may be a way to get in for free anyway. I should take advantage of this locality and attend more shows that I would otherwise not have encountered or even considered, because why not? They're here. It's like going to a mall. It doesn't really cost them anything to have one more person wandering the booth hallways in and out of the different halls of convention centers. And by the way, there are many convention spaces here in Vegas. Everybody is probably familiar with the convention center in Vegas. I'm sorry, the Las Vegas Convention Center, LVCC. But there are several other spaces, and some of them are just as nice, or maybe even a little bit nicer. Not everything is CES, as it turns out, which is the goodest of good things. So yeah, I need to get out more. Anyway, that's the deal. I used to think the best part of trade shows was the people you would run into, especially because I've got a sort of a storied resume. Now, I mean, that's still interesting, but generally speaking, trade shows, the CES trade show, too much of the same thing every year with different colors. A couple years, 2022 was going to be the year of blockchain, I think. Last year was the year of, what was it? I think they were starting to do some AI, but they were doing something else. And then this year, of course, everything is, last year was a little bit of robotics, a little bit of AI. What's going on with the blockchain? So it was a little bit of a transition. This year, everything is AI, although they are focused on accessibility for aging or living in place kind of thing, not so much on assistive technologies, which I think is a giant gap that should be filled. And then ag tech, agricultural technology, smart farming. Vegas actually has a certain amount of strength here, given the water situation in Southern Nevada. So people do spend some time on that. There's an entire show called Indoor Ag. I think it's indoor.ag, but it's Indoor Ag, Indoor AG. And it's focused entirely on indoor farming, and that's here in Vegas every year. So that's a thing here in Vegas. Like I said, I need to get out more, check out more of these shows that are not CES. And there you go. Maybe I should offer to work in booths for people. That would be fun. I'll have to look into that. I never really thought about it until now. That's all I have to say about that. Thanks for listening, as always. Check out my other programs if you visit that buymeacoffee.com/DanHugo link. And don't forget that Coffee Solo is also published randomly, usually once a week or so. It needs to be more. and there's more stuff coming. So if you started buymeacoffee.com/DanHugo, you will find links to everything. You don't need to buy me a coffee. You can if you want to. All proceeds through that portal go towards coffee or coffee-related accessories, which help to power all of the things I'm working on. That is all I have to say. Now I need to go head down and get my badge and then see what's up at CES 2026. Take care now. Bye-bye.